Hey family, hope you're all having a great day. Thanks for clicking and welcome to my video. Wanted to share on this video my experiences on how I parented my son with ADHD. Now, according to webmd.com, the term ADHD is the same thing as ADD. At the time when my son was diagnosed with ADHD, the doctor said ADD, but what I think is he was an older doctor, and I guess the term was more commonly used, back in the earlier days. And then in 1994, it sounded like, according to WebMD, and I'll share the link, is that the term ADHD is all-inclusive, which includes ADD. But in this article, it talks about, what signs to look for, with kids or anyone with ADHD. The three ones that they, signs to look for was inattention. That's what my kid had. Impulsivity and hyperactivity. I think just looking back with my son, it was more about inattention. He wasn't very disruptive, but he was just a daydreamer. So looking back with my kid, he was always a positive, happy kid. During his toddler days, very quiet. A couple concerns I did have was, he wasn't really talking, or, his speech was kind of delayed, right around, the 2, 3, 4-year-old mark. So that was a little concerning. And then, I think with any parent who, delayed in potty training, he was not fully potty trained until like 4 years old. I mean, he was shitting like a man at 3. It was ridiculous. But he got on the train, and he was able to potty train, and to this day, he's 18 now, he's successful. But in all seriousness, the ADHD conversation started in the first grade. I remember it was the first parent teachers conference. The teacher, very nice teacher, she was great, inquired to me, during that first meeting, has my son ever been diagnosed with ADHD? She saw signs. My son wasn't necessarily disruptive, but rather more of a dreamer, and then loses focus, when the teacher's speaking or when there's homework that needs to get done in the classroom, his mind would wander. I did object, during that meeting, just, I guess from a dad's perspective, is that, it was his first time sitting in a desk full day in a classroom. Here in my school district, kindergarten was only a half day. And so, the other half he would go to daycare and, play around and whatnot. So that was my objection during that first meeting. And the ask from me was just, can we keep an eye on it? I think he could adjust well, as the year progresses, and let's just keep open lines of communication. And so she agreed to it. And, throughout that first grade year, never heard back, never really any kind of, comments in regards to inattention and things like that. So I thought it went well. I thought it was fine. I thought it was, no issues, that my son was able to adjust. But the second grade was a different story. Again, at the first parent-teachers conference, the second grade teacher, very nice lady, she was pretty much straightforward and just saying, I see signs of ADHD. I've seen it before in several kids. I would ask for my son to go get tested for ADHD. So, after hearing that, I wanted to do what's best for my kid. So I did set up a doctor's appointment and got an ADHD testing evaluation at the doctor's office. So in the fall of 2011, we went ahead and got that evaluation done with the doctor at the doctor's office. And the doctor did diagnose my son with slightly ADD or ADHD. Although it was hard for me to kind of swallow that, to hear the diagnosis, but I also wanted what's best for my son, as far as development and just kind of, progressing as his years move on. The teachers and doctors have seen this several times, so, I kind of trusted them, and I did trust them. and we agreed to move forward with medication. Now, I don't remember the names of the medication, but I'm sure during that time, whatever the popular branded, generic ADHD meds were, that's what he was on. We went through a few of them. I think just because different dosing, or maybe, medication A wasn't making him as focused versus medication B. So we kind of switched medications. And then we also did kind of a longer acting medication as well. So, the medication would kind of not wear off, after 4 hours versus like 6 to 8 hours. So, during that time, several medications that we went through. These medications, it seemed like it was working. My son was definitely more focused in the classroom, but his grades marginally improved. And I didn't like the fact that he wasn't really himself when he was on these medications. Don't get me wrong, when he was on those medications, he was very focused, but he didn't have a funny side to him. He was pretty serious pretty much all the time when he was on these medications. But it was something that I did miss. And, with this medication, I didn't give it to him during the weekends. I didn't give them to him during the vacations or holidays. Just when he was in class is when I gave him those ADHD medications. As we fast forward, so he took these, he was on ADHD medications from 2nd to 7th grade. Like I said, he was more focused in the classroom, definitely. His grades slightly improved, but it wasn't like, a huge difference. But his personality was definitely different on the medications, like I said. But as we fast forward, prior to the 8th grade, something happened, and my son came to me, and he told me that he didn't want to take these medications anymore. He said he didn't feel well when taking them, and he wanted to see if he can be successful without taking these ADHD medications. I was torn. I really wanted him to be successful in the classroom, but also saw that what he looked like when he was on these medications. So we talked about it. We went back and forth a little bit. We had a really good conversation. And at the end of it, we decided that, he would be off these medications and evaluate, regularly just how he's doing performance-wise in school. And if he didn't do well, then he would go back on the medications. That was the agreement. And one of the first lines of the agreement would be is just he would get all A's and B's in school moving forward. And if he kind of regressed from that, then we would put him back on the medications. Well, here we are like 5 years later. He graduated high school, he's going into college, and he still doesn't take these medications. Since then, he has had all A's and B's. Maybe his senior year of high school, he did take some college credits. He did get a C, I think, in one class. But overall, he maintained like a 3.5 GPA. He's doing great. He took 2 years of college credits. He did the dual credit running start program his junior and senior year of high school. And I had no complaints. The teachers never complained or anything like that. Not every kid is the same, right? Every kid's different. With the diagnosis of ADHD and, whenever they're on medications as well. But I wanted to share a couple things that I did as a parent to support my son once he stopped taking ADHD medications. Now, supporting my son from the 2nd grade when he was first diagnosed with ADHD through the 12th grade is obviously a different kind of support. I think, earlier years, it's a lot more hand-holding type support versus, going in the latter years of his life. It was more about, just checking in and what he needs from me. But making sure, even from the early years, that he had a routine, right? After school, have a snack, get your homework done, get your reading done. Get your studying done regularly. That was something that I really implemented, and I checked his work as well after that. Sometimes there was only like 10-minute homework days, and then sometimes there were like 2-hour homework days. It was really tough, but I made sure that there was structure, that he was on board on regularly having this habit and developing this habit of getting his studies done. Another thing that I did to support him was, and I don't know if this really helps, but I guess in theory it might, is just reducing sugar intake. And drinking water 100% of the time. In the early years, my kids had a shitload of cavities. I couldn't figure it out. They brushed their teeth, twice a day. They even flossed. But every time we had to check up, my kids always had at least one or two cavities. It was ridiculous. After speaking with the dentist staff, after this one specific visit, I was just getting sick of the amount of cavities that they were having. The dentist staff said the main culprit was the sugary drinks. And then looking back, it was definitely the Capri Suns. The kids used to drink that like water, and I would buy that stuff in bulk. Interestingly, the cavities showed up on the front teeth of my kids all the time. And that's where they would drink the Capri Suns through the straw, and that straw would land right on their front teeth. So once I found that out, we went cold turkey. We went from drinking Capri Suns to water 100% of the time. And interestingly enough, the kids never complained about it. They adjusted well. And after that, significantly less cavities. I wouldn't say 100% no cavities, but significantly less. I think just the transition of going to water definitely helped. Not only with less cavities, but also less sugar, right? Kids don't need a lot of sugar in their diet. So having water every day in their diet, in their regular routine, really helped. And another thing that I did was had regular communication with my son's teachers via conferences and email. And I was always, quick to follow up with any kind of questions they had. And I would reach out to them, once every month, once every couple months, just to make sure how my son is doing in the classroom. And, since he got off those ADHD medications in the 8th grade, he did well. There was no complaints from the teachers at all. I also gave, financial incentives for getting A's and B's. I think that really helped. I think that kind of dangling that carrot in front of him really got him motivated to do well as well. And some of the times it wasn't financial incentives, right? It was a reward. If we would go to go dinner, his choice, that type of stuff after his grades came out. Or we would celebrate and just go to Dairy Queen, that kind of stuff. So a little tip on that, I think it all worked out, and to this day, we still do rewards. We'll go out to dinner, his choice, things like that. I made sure that he was active as well. Now, from the 2nd through the 7th grade, when he was on these ADHD medications, my son was also doing Taekwondo. He would go to Taekwondo, 2-3 times a week. And, I do feel that, being active really helps with development, and burn off the energy as well. But when he stopped taking the ADHD medications in the 8th grade, he didn't want to do Taekwondo either. And so that was a real tough one to discuss with him. But at the end of the day, I told him, hey, you don't have to do Taekwondo anymore, but you got to find something that you want to do that's going to be active. And sure enough, he found football. I think his friends were doing it, and the teachers, teachers/coaches encouraged him to do it, go out and try out. So he did, and here we are, I think 5 years later, and he's still playing football, and he's getting an opportunity to play at the next level of college, a small college down in Oregon, but he's very excited about that, and he's looking forward to it. And he's also doing CrossFit 3 times a week. I think it's a huge investment. I think it's a really great investment for my kid to be active and to break a sweat. I think, a lot of those workouts that he does, it's incorporated into the football program's workouts too. Especially the Olympic style lifts. That really helps him, and he really enjoys it. And I highly recommend this. I highly recommend CrossFit. I highly recommend any kind of activity for a kid to get out there and break a sweat. Breaking a sweat is going to release some energy. And lastly, I wasn't his best friend. I was his dad. I was firm but fair. I think at the end of the day, you got to be firm as a dad, as a parent. but also you got to be flexible as well. And I think just, those conversations that we had in 8th grade about him wanting to stop the ADHD medications and then him wanting to stop Taekwondo, it was tough, but, I was okay with it. But again, I was firm where he had to still be active. And then he also had to maintain A's and B's. Tell me your thoughts. Leave a comment, subscribe to my channel. Again, these are my perspectives and views. I'm not a professional. I'm just a dad. That's all I got. Stay safe, stay positive, and be happy. I love you, Dad.